Let's take a moment to silence our phones. That way we don't have any interruptions during our discussion tonight. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيامة يوم الدين. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, our discussions have led us into a third night. And tonight, we will be discussing an issue that is becoming more and more prevalent, not only amongst the Western world, amongst our youth, as well as those a little bit older than the youth, but also in our centers as well. And this is a disturbing trend, and it needs to be addressed once and for all from the minbar. This is the phenomenon known as cancel culture. And just so that we are all on the same page of what I am talking about tonight, like last night, let's start off with some definitions so that we all are aware of what exactly I am talking about, inshallah. بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. الثاني على حب المسلم بن عقيل. This topic of cancel culture is one that plagues our youth from the university level to the work level. Indeed, you find that someone who has made a comment at any stage of their life is now subject to, whether they have repented, whether they have changed their beliefs or not, is now subject to the utmost scrutiny. What is cancel culture? How I would define it for our discussion tonight is going after someone who has some kind of status in the public eye, and then going after them by scouring their social media, by going through their past statements, by going through their past actions, and then taking the role of Rabbul Alameen, Maliki Yawmiddin, and becoming the judge, jury, and executioner. What you find, and by the way, this is not a totally bad phenomenon. We need to give respect where it's due. Some of you may have heard of the likes of Kevin Spacey, of Harvey Weinstein, of some rappers such as Recently, he was in the news. I think his name was R. Kelly, as well as others who have been torn down in the public eye before they could even have a chance to defend themselves, to explain themselves. Most of the times, you will find that the people on the other end of this stick, this baton that they will now wield over this person's head, are youth. People who feel like the world still has problems and they are looking for a cause to make themselves relevant, to, in their eyes, make the powerful fall from grace. And so, while tonight's lecture we will be observing some of the ill consequences of this phenomenon, we have to acknowledge that there are some goods that come from it as well. And when these personalities and their actions come to light, it sheds a new light upon their personality, upon their persona. We get to see an insight into their personal life. And at some point, a public figure does give up some of their privacy. And so we have to draw a line somewhere. And that line is not being delineated as well as it should be from the professorial class, meaning the people who we find in faculty positions at our universities, from leaders in our community, from political leaders. Instead, you find them goading this type of action on, where if someone has done something that is not socially acceptable, whether it be 10 years ago, whether it be 15, 20, 30 years ago, they need to be canceled. They need to be stripped of their respect, stripped of their titles. When I say stripped of their titles, this can go up even as far as Prince Andrew, the second son of Queen Elizabeth, because of some of the news articles that he's finding himself entangled in because of Jeffrey Epstein. So titles are gone. Future employment is now dubious. So this cancel culture phenomenon really targets a person's character, livelihood, and future employability. And so this is very dangerous. While it can be a weapon used to bring down certain personalities, we will examine the types of personalities that should be brought down once we get to our gham/aza/musiba part of our presentation tonight and discussion. There are others who are innocent, and yet they suffer such harsh circumstances that the damages can almost never be repaired. About a month ago, the discussion that was taking over the nation, and indeed on YouTube, was the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard case. I don't need to see a show of hands. I can see from the nods. Everybody knows who those two people are. One from the Pirates of the Caribbean fame, one from Aquaman fame, right? Astaghfirullah, the Molana watches too many movies and haram things, right? But we are all holy, holier than the Molana. And inshallah, we'll touch on this type of attitude tonight as well, because this is something that we need to defeat and stand up to once and for all in our masajid and in our centers. But first, let's deal with how we experience it in the secular world. A couple of years ago, when they went through their huge divorce because of the allegations against Johnny Depp, whether true or not, we won't take a side, but he lost his entire career, only to go through the most difficult of circumstances, which we all, I think, saw in the court case wall-to-wall coverage and analyses, that he finally has a name again. he finally has a livelihood again. And so, what happens when the entire ire of a community is now directed towards one person? You find that at a public level, they'll go through all of the things that we mentioned. They won't be able to find employment. They won't be able to probably even keep the same name. They won't be able to go to the same community centers that they were going to. They won't be able to be seen the same way again. But at a personal level, they might be going through psychological, mental, personal problems that are also side effects of this type of attention or negative limelight. And this is not something necessarily new, but it's something that is on the rise. I'll give you an example. This is not the first time that the West has targeted someone because they felt that what they did was socially unacceptable. A few years ago, we saw many statues of former presidents torn down. Why? Because they owned slaves. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, the likes. All of their statues were torn down simply because they were abiding by the norms of their time, where slavery was still in the process of being eradicated. But that's not enough for the woke teenagers and adolescents of our time. How dare they not be ma'soom? In our terminology, ma'soom, right? And so if there are any of those youth in our communities, I would like to remind them that we only have 14, last I checked. Of course, the prophets are infallible as well, but that's not something to go and raise political leaders up to the standard of. And yet, even if they are not part of cancel culture, you will see them holding these figures up to those standards, such that if they have a blemish when the political campaigns start, that becomes the gossip of the town. Oh, did you hear candidate X did this? Did you hear candidate Y said that? Did you hear? And this is something that we see from all spectrums of the political debate. This isn't just left or right, this is everything in between as well. And we Muslims have experienced this from the West as well. There's a request for the brothers and sisters to move up. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We see this directed towards the Muslims as well. Where? How many of you have heard a criticism towards the most perfect man in all of human history? Muhammad ibn Abdullah salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Where he is questioned, how could he marry someone so young? Now, of course, this is not something that we have to worry about in our hadith corpus. But for our brothers and sisters, and oftentimes us as well, when we go to colleges and universities, whether to attend or to speak, one of the most common misconceptions that you will always find is, why did he marry this wife at that age? And we often, one of the answers that is given, I won't comment on whether it's the right answer or a wrong answer, we often comment that, inshallah, wait for the end, inshallah, please.
No, excuse me. You need to mention names. You're telling us history.
Inshallah.
We have young kids here. They can't
Sure.
understand which wife.
So,
Please.
the brother has requested that we mention names. Sometimes it's better to mention names, sometimes it's better not to. In this case, I don't see a problem with what the brother has requested. So, the wife in question is Aisha. And the age that she's often portrayed as is 6 years old for the time of nikah and 9 years old for the time of consummation. Now, for not just many in our secular society, of our non-Muslim co-workers and friends, even for some of us, that seems like a large age gap, because if the math is performed, then the age of Rasulullah at that time would be 52. We have fathers and uncles in this hall right now who are around that age. Would it be socially acceptable for them to be seen with a 9-year-old wife? So what you find is that many a times the answer that is given is, well, that was for a different time, and this is a different time. At that time, maybe the maturity was reached earlier. Regardless of that, that's not our main focus tonight, but it is something that we probably each and every single one of us has had to experience in our day-to-day lives. And so this attempt to cancel our prophet is therefore an attempt to paint him in a light where he is no longer credible, where no one should listen to him, where everyone should boycott him, and therefore it becomes a important issue that we have to, in a polemical setting, refute. So, this is not something that is foreign to us, but it is something that is on the rise, especially in secular communities, especially at the university campus. And it's, as I mentioned, something that professors, our community leaders sometimes are encouraging, whether implicitly or explicitly. And this is not right. At the end of the day, there's a saying that we should all try to live by, that when it comes to freedom of speech, which is something that this country emphasizes and prides itself on, and Islam in most cases also agrees with, is in terms of freedom of speech, you are not supposed to shut down other people. Rather, you are supposed to hear them out, let them have their say in the conversation, and then have a better argument, such that in a debate setting, you're not trying to convince this person, not your interlocutor. Rather, you are trying to convince an audience. I mean, if there's no audience, and you're going up against someone who's stubborn, why are you wasting your time? You have better things to do. Second, if this person can be reasoned with, then do it as the Quran says, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Do it in ways that are beautiful, in ways that are best, that bring them closer to the truth, or at least so that they can understand you and understand your arguments. Because if I have to silence you, and this is something that I've noticed in the past few nights amongst the private gatherings, is that some Maulanas, apparently when our youth are presenting them questions, they might say, oh no, we don't ask questions like that. You know, Alama Tawatabai, rahmatullah alayh, is a very interesting saying. He says it is a very good thing for a scholar when he can say loudly, I don't know. So if there are youth, and there have been some of even the elders who have asked me questions, when I don't know, I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. I'll have to get back to you maybe. I'll have to take your phone number. I'll have to take your email address. I will, because now I'm curious myself, try to research it myself. But this is not something that everyone is willing to afford everybody else. Indeed, what you find is that if a Maulana, I won't mention names, brother, this time because we don't want to mention sheikhs from our minbar. This happened a few months ago. It happened to a dear friend of ours, where he mentioned something on a social platform, and while the statement is true, some people's feelings were a little bit fragile. And even though he didn't say anything wrong, maybe we could say that his wording could have been a little bit better, as constructive criticism to the Maulana. But the way how he was treated is something we should never do to those who are in positions of ilm. The way how, and this I will mention, the sisters community reacted to this Maulana, they were practically trying to cancel him. They were reporting him to the social network. These are Shi'as reporting a Shia Maulana. What have our times come to if in 2022 we have the jur'ah to come and do this? And you know, this comes from a very particular mindset which we see sometimes in our centers. What is that mindset? You find that sometimes those who feel that And I don't know anything about your community, so I don't want my comments to come across as if, like, oh, someone put you up to this, right? I'm speaking from a perspective of many communities have reached out to me. I have lived in some communities, and so therefore I'm commenting on what I have seen and experienced. I don't know anything about your community. But sometimes from a board, sometimes from someone whose grandfather or great-grandfather set up a center, unfortunately they feel like they have more say, they have more importance in the community. And sometimes you don't even have to have that much contribution to the community. You just have to have a few white hairs here or here, and you feel that you can be someone who comments on everybody. Now, what are some examples of this? What are some examples of this? And why does this destroy communities? I'll give you an example that happened at a Sunni center. Not in our community, not in your community. But someone wanted to introduce Islam to a Buddhist. So he introduced them to the mosque setting. And the Buddhist had a question: where are your idols? Every center, every synagogue, every church, every temple that I've been to has some kind of a idol or some kind of a statue. Even if it's just at the church, it's the cross representing the crucifixion. Where is your idol? I don't see anything. I just see this mihrab, and that's it. He said, oh, we don't, for us, God is greater than needing to take a form. He said, oh, wow. And he goes and takes his arms like this, and he bows down. And the uproar this action caused, this sincere, genuine action of a Buddhist who, what is he supposed to know? The knee-jerk trigger reaction that some of our brothers in Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and I don't think this is something that we can excuse our communities, some of them, from. Inshallah, our community over here is a very enlightened, hospitable community, but less hospitable communities are so knee-jerk reactionary that they created an uproar. And what is this? What is this Hindu, even though the guy is Buddhist, what is this Hindu arm reaction? What is this? We don't allow this over here. Get him out of here. Who brought him in here? Look at the kinds of clothes that he's wearing. What is he wearing over here? This person, how do you think they felt about Islam once they left the masjid? This is their first interaction with Muslims. This is their first interaction. Fine, maybe it's not the sect that we agree with, but at least it's Islam. It's a little bit better than Buddhism. I think we can all agree. What is his reaction? He says, I'm never going to visit a masjid again. These types of vitriolic reactions destroy people's willingness to come to the community centers, to the Imam Bargas, to the Hussainiyas, to the Masajid. I remember we were taking a vacation once in Chicago, and we went to a Hindu temple just to go and take pictures because of their architecture. We were welcomed, and this is during COVID, by even the people who were volunteering to administer COVID shots. We were asked, do you need anything? Do you need directions? Do you need to find out, where the bathrooms are? Do you need to figure out where the mandir is? He said, no, we already did the entire tour. Thank you so much. But we're just heading out now. Okay, please let us know if you have any questions about our faith. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help. We'd love to help you. Not half an hour later, we go to a Shia center. And it's not the time of Salah, but we want to show them the architecture of this masjid as well. Because it is truly a beautiful, ecocentric, beautiful architecturally designed mosque. And I felt like I was at the border between the US and Canada. The way how I was interrogated at the door. Who are you? Where are you coming from? What business do you have here? Do you know anybody over here? What's your name? What's your family history? I'm like, I just want to go and show the border. What if I need to go and, it's still the time of Dhuhr. I didn't miss Dhuhr by that much. It's like, 15 minutes? I want to come in and pray. While we were inside, we were watched by a very suspicious eye. Who are these guys? And while I understand from a security perspective, we do need to have our guard up, why is it that city after city that I visit, other religions can hold a torch to our centers? Why are they so much more kind and inviting? I'll tell you a sad story that one of my teachers shared with me. And honestly, brothers and sisters, what other reaction are you supposed to do but just say, may God guide us, may God help us? Before that, I'll give you a story to juxtapose this, to compare this to. I went to an Ismaili center, and we were about to leave from there, so I needed to do wudu, because pretty soon it would be the time of Maghrib, and we needed to catch the Jama'ah. And the center was not too far away. As I go into the bathroom, I see something that I've never seen at any community center. None of the religions I've ever gone to go visit have done this before. And this taught me to go and do this at masajid, at secular places, conference halls, places of work. What is this simple thing? After he was done washing his face and washing his hands, he just went and took one paper towel, wiped up the sink around him so that it looks a little bit neater, threw that away into the garbage can. What a novel idea. I mean, garbage in the garbage can? Wow. And then he walked out. Now the sad story from one of our teachers, who says his teacher told him the sad story that news had reached him about America's standards, about their masajid, that if you want to know, and this is something that in an interfaith conference, this is not too many years ago that my teacher's teacher told him to this, maybe like 15 years ago, young teacher. A Christian, a father, or a priest comes up to the Maulana and says, you want to know how we can tell if a building that looks like a church has been bought by your people, your Muslims, your fellow Congregationalists? You want to know how we know? We can't tell if, because the church, the cross has been taken down from the top or not. We have to go inside. Very welcoming at the beginning. We can't tell from there because there's sometimes converts. We have to go to the bathrooms. If the bathrooms are in a horrific scene, we know that this is the Muslims. If they're upkept, then we know it's still a church. This is the state that 15, 20 years ago in Iran, our teachers are hearing about our halat. And this is not to say that America is the only, this is something that we see in Canada. This is something that we see even at the shrines of our Ma'sumin. You would think, when you go to visit maybe the Dalai Lama, or maybe you go to visit the Pope, or maybe you go to visit someone of these other religions' stature, or their temples, that maybe because they, at least from our perspective, are not on haqq, but they don't really take care of their facilities as much. We believe that we are on haqq, or maybe we don't. I don't know. Maybe we don't really truly believe in our aqidah. Maybe this is why our centers are in such disarray. Maybe this is why the walls are falling down. Maybe this is why when the parking lot needs repair, it's so hard. It's harder to, extract money from some of our wallets than it is to extract teeth from my kid's mouth. Maybe it's because we don't believe that much. Or maybe it's because the people who could make a difference in our centers, people who want to come back, people who have a history, people who might have had an encounter or two where they're trying to put that in their past. But there is an uncle who has a mouth, and he's dressed in a kurta or a shalwar kameez, and he's looking at this teenager and saying, Astaghfirullah, too. How dare he come in with earrings and tattoos and a hoodie? Is this a gang meetup or is this the majalis of Abu Abdullah? Now, I want to ask a very simple question. I don't know who died and made him Imam Zaman. I don't know who, made him the Marja al-A'la. I don't know why, he feels the need to police everybody. But I'll tell you what it does do. This drives those youth who are born into a Shia family who maybe they don't have as long as a beard as we do. Maybe they have taken off their earrings, but you can see their piercings still. Maybe their tattoos are still there and they don't want to go through the painful process of erasing their tattoos. But we judge the book by its cover. And oftentimes, brothers and sisters, we get the book wrong. We think that we're looking at Mein Kampf from Hitler, when inside this person's soul could be Usul al-Kafi. It could be Nahj al-Balagha. You don't know. The person who could be sitting here next Muharram, maybe today at a night like this, on a Sunday night, even though he knows he has work, is passed out and he has alcohol in his veins. Maybe he's going to go and serve a 2-month sentence. Maybe in that prison he's going to have a chaplain come and turn him around. Maybe that chaplain comes from this center and he brings him to this center. I fear of another situation where a Buddhist will come into a center and he might not know what exactly to do, what the customs and norms are, and he'll be expelled. And then with what face, with what kind of embarrassed face is he going to come back? You think these types of people who issue these comments, you think they're ever wrong? You think they have it in them to go and issue an apology? Every single person they come across, they have to nitpick. They have to go and find something. They can't ever be happy. They're the haram police and the halal police. If you don't, this is something that we see in other schools of thought, and I'd like to share with you the anecdote that some of my friends came up with. As you all probably do know, and for those of you who don't, our brothers in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, some of them, make it a point that your pant leg has to be folded up a little bit when you pray. Some of you might have experienced the weird comment here or there when you might go to pray in their masajid, and they say, brother, go and fold up your pant legs, right? And you say, why? What's going on over here? Oh, because there's a hadith about, whatever dangles below this is in hellfire. Maybe, brother, there's a metaphorical explanation to this hadith. We don't have to discard the hadith, but maybe there's another way to look at this. Regardless, this happened when I was, and this happened in Michigan, where an uncle was praying a row behind one of my friends, and he did not roll up his pant leg. After the namaz, he comes up to him and comments, brother, your prayer wasn't accepted. Why? Because your pant leg wasn't rolled up. Allahu Akbar. He had the perfect response. He was around 10 years old at the time. And sometimes our 10-year-olds have the best responses to go and put our elders back into place and remind them that, hey, let me share with you what the comment is. What's the comment? He says, Uncle, I don't know if my namaz was accepted or not, but I can tell you for sure you were focusing not on Allah but my pants. So yours was definitely not accepted. Sometimes it takes the sharp wit of a youth to bring our elders back down to planet Earth. Sometimes these comments, sometimes these decisions are taken so much to heart. And now there's criticism to be had on both sides. If, brothers and sisters, you did not receive the honor this Muharram to pass around the water on behalf of Sayyida Zahra, then do not take this personally and say, I will never come back to this center ever again. See if they ever get my khums again. See if they ever get my sadaqah again. Why? And then we instill this hatred into our children and grandchildren and say, don't go to that masjid. You know how they treated your father. They didn't give him the president role. They didn't give him the vice president role. They didn't let him serve water and be the khadim. Sometimes we see this among speakers. where you're invited to a conference, but you're not the keynote speaker. You were put closer to Salat al-Maghrib, where everyone hates you if you take a little bit longer. And trust me, I felt that hatred a little bit in these last few nights. And I'd just like to say, I would love to start Salat al-Maghrib and Isha on time. I would also love to start my presentation on time. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
A second for the love of the Imam of our time.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
These comments destroy families, destroy friendships, all in this hidden agenda of a cancel culture. That how dare this person lead namaz? How dare this person sit on the minbar of Abu Abdullah? And we go after these people instead of how our prophets and imams did with the eye of forgiveness. We come at them with the entire power of Malik Yawmiddin, of judge, jury, and executioner, that this person doesn't do the things that I like. Astaghfirullah, how are they ever going to get to Jannah? You know, a Maulana who I respect once said, sometimes our conception of Jannah, and this is appropriate to mention in this topic of cancel culture, is that we think that in Jannah, the only people who are coming with us, because let's do a little bit of mathematics. I mentioned that Indianapolis seems to have a reputation for good mathematics amongst the children. Let's do a little bit of community dividing right now. Humanity is, let's say, 7 billion people, right? Well, let's divide them. Let's say there are the believers and then there's the atheists. The atheists. How are they ever going to get saved? Even the agnostics, let's throw them in there. The people who take the safer position and say, I don't know. إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ. To hellfire, and what a horrible place it is. Now let's further divide the believers. Well, you have the Abrahamic faiths, and you have the non-Abrahamic faiths. Now, the Buddhists and the Hindus, what chance do they have? Away with them. فَبُعْدًا لِلْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ, Surah Hud says. Away with them, these kafirs. By the way, this is not what the Quran ever uses the word kafir for. It's not a non-Muslim. A kafir is someone who has at some level understood in their heart of hearts a truth. And then linguistically, what does kafara mean? Kafara means a farmer who digs to plant a seed and then buries it. Kuffar al-nabat, as Surah Al-Hadid says, the farmer of a seed. This person takes the truth, buries it deep down, and then covers it up with filth. That is a kafir. Someone who is actively rejecting a truth. Not someone who doesn't know. That person is just a non-Muslim. But of course, to our cancel culture friends, we are trying to call back to a mode of kindness. We don't want to make that distinction sometimes. So going back to community dividing, what chance do the non-Abrahamic faiths have? So Abrahamic faiths it is. Now amongst the Abrahamic faiths, we have Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And this is how, honestly, some people think. Well, the Christians are polytheists anyway. They might claim to be monotheists, but we think they're polytheists. Who knows what the Jews believe, but they're not Muslims. And so, away with them too. Now amongst the Muslims, let's just keep it to two of the sects. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and Ahl Tashayyu. Sunni and Shia. The Sunni will say this about the Shia will say this about the Sunni. Maybe not explicitly, like how I am right now, but they will say this in their heads to themselves. All I am doing is bringing it onto the minbar to show how ridiculous some of this thinking is. They'll say, well, that person, hellfire. Is this a scholarly opinion? Can you cite it? Can you back it up using our primary sources? Do you know what our primary sources are? Can you read Arabic at least? Oh, you can't. But you're just issuing fatwas like this? Then let's focus within just the Shias. Well, among Shias, you have usulis and you have akhbaris. Those who just like to read the hadith and stick with that, and those who like to follow maraja. Let's say the usulis say, oh, the akhbaris, how are they going to ever make it to paradise? Maybe Allah will have rahman, but like, come on, let's be honest. Then once we get to our maraja level, we still don't stop. This one follows marja X, this one follows marja Y, this one follows marja Z. Well, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'd like to issue another request for those of our brothers and sisters who came in a little bit later to please put your phones on silent, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So then we get to the Shia marja level. And within the marja level, well, if you don't follow my marja, I don't even know how you're doing your religion. How are you accessing your fiqh? This one is this one is that. My marja, however, is the best. But we don't even stop there, because even amongst the followers of my marja, you have good people and you have bad people. So of course the bad people, you have to have correct iman and amal salihat. At least they know one ayah of the Quran, these kinds of people. Or half of an ayah maybe. And so, who have you left to go to Jannah? You, maybe your family, and 10 other people who live at the same time as you. This is who you're taking to Jannah? If Allah is like this, then we have not understood the Quran, we have not understood Ahlul Bayt, brothers and sisters. This is not how Ahlul Bayt taught us to be. They raised us to be better than this. They raised us to be a lot more compassionate. They even showed us the different stages of Qiyamah where other people will have to be questioned, and if they get through the questioning, maybe they're from a different sect, they can go to Jannah. There are chances. Allah is not as vindictive as some of us in our community centers. We, brothers and sisters, as I mentioned yesterday night, have the light of guidance of the Quran and Ahlul Bayt, and yet we act as if we have neither. We bring shame to some of their names. We bring shame to the word of Allah. Not only with how much disinterest we as Shias normally have towards the Quran, we don't have a great relationship with the Quran, but also some of the things that the Quran is then talking about us because we feel holier than them. This is completely incorrect and condemned by our scholars, by the Ahlul Bayt, and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which now brings us to someone who was cancelled 1400 years ago. Someone who joined Imam al-Hussein from his journey from Medina to Mecca and was instructed by Imam Hussein to leave halfway through Shahr Ramadan. Said to him, we have received letters from the Kufans. You need to go to Kufa and see if this is a real sentiment that they have. The kinds of letters that these people wrote. Yabna Rasulullah, come, the fruit is ripe. You have 100,000 men at your command. Come and we will be under your command. We will take down this fasiq sitting in Sham, Yazid ibn Muawiyah, and we will institute the rulership of Al Muhammad. Come while the fruit is ripe. This is a very interesting point that we need to keep in mind when we are faced with the question, why didn't Imam Hussein? Because some will go and accuse the Shi'as of killing Imam Hussein, the Shia of Kufa. You think Imam Hussein didn't know? Even if we don't believe that the Ahlul Bayt have this type of ilm al-ghayb where they know where the hearts of people truly lie. You think Imam Hussein didn't know? Imam Hussein sent a messenger to Kufa in Shahr Ramadan. When was Ali al-Asghar born and when did the migration from Medina to Mecca happen? towards the end of Rajab. Therefore, brothers and sisters, your preparation next year for Muharram starts in Rajab. Start to connect with your Imam in those last few days of Rajab and picture where he is on the map. And ask yourself, what kind of oppression was he already starting to face? Because the Imam didn't just end up one day in Karbala on the 10th of Muharram with 30,000 swords pressuring him to give bay'ah. No, the Imam unfortunately was under this type of pressure for months. From the minute that Yazid became Khalifa, Imam Hussein's life became very stressful and very difficult. So, how many months is Ramadan after Rajab? About 1.5 months, right? Because he leaves halfway through Shahr Ramadan. He sends Muslim ibn Aqil, Gharib Kufa, towards the land of Kufa to see if the people are really with him or not. Muslim ibn Aqil goes with 260 and dehydrated, and they say, you have to go by yourself, we will not make it. And indeed, those 2 guides died on the journey. Muslim ibn Aqil does not know the way to Kufa on his own. He doesn't know when he will reach water next. He shows up to the doorstep of a city that is unnamed in our sources, and he stops over there. He gets water and immediately writes a letter to Imam Hussein. This is where I am. This is what I have experienced on my journey so far. This is what happened to those 2 guides. What are your further instructions, Ya Aba Abdullah? Imam Hussein says to him, immediately go to Kufa. You have a mission, don't delay. Muslim ibn Aqil enters Kufa on the 5th of Shawwal. And as he enters, he has this as well at the end of Imam Hussein's letter. Stay with someone who is trustworthy. Stay with someone who is very trustworthy. So he stays at the residence of Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, one of the brave young soldiers from the time of Imam Ali, and he stays in his house. Not too long after, the entirety of Kufa came to Mukhtar's house to hear what Muslim ibn Aqil had to say. And he reads them the letter of Imam Hussein. And at that moment, the most conservative of our sources say that 18,000 people in Kufa pledged their allegiance to Muslim ibn Aqil. Other numbers go even higher and say 25,000, 30,000. But what we find in the letter that Muslim sends to Imam al-Hussein is, Ya Aba Abdullah, 18,000 people are ready as of right now. And they are ready to heed your call. After Muslim's speech, a man by the name of Abis says to the Safir of Imam Hussein, I don't know what the rest of these people will do, nor do I know how their hearts will be in a few months from now when Abu Abdullah needs them. But my sword and my life are at your service from now, Ya Muslim. Muslim ibn Awsaja says the same thing. He says, well spoken, how eloquent. My heart is in the same place. Brothers and sisters, analyze this. This is around the 5th of Shawwal. How many more months do these people need to keep their resoluteness? They need to keep it. Shawwal is the 10th month. They need to keep it for Dhul Qa'dah. They need to keep it for Dhul Hijjah. 2 months and 10 days. On that 9th night, when Abu Abdullah asked them once more, if there's anyone who has anything that they need to go and attend to, go. You have my permission. You can go. Each and every single one of these people echoes the same thing they said to Muslim. That even if immortality was given to us, we would still stand by you. This, according to our sources, when Abis and Muslim ibn Awsaja pledged their allegiance and said these beautiful words, was only 27 days before the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil. How in 27 days did the hearts immediately shift. We find that Muslim ibn Aqil had the support of the Kufans, but Kufa was a very fickle city. Some of the people of Kufa, such as Umar ibn Sa'ad, were very disturbed by these large showings at Mukhtar's house, and they sent letters to Ibn Ziyad. They sent letters to Yazid ibn Muawiyah, telling him, informing him that this is the dealings of Kufa. Their hearts are going towards Imam al-Hussein. Yazid immediately said, we need to take action. He went to his trusted advisor, Sir John, and he asked him what he should do. Sir John, this Christian man, told Yazid, you need to immediately appoint Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad as the governor of Kufa. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad was already the governor of Basra, and Yazid did not like him. He already had a hatred for him. But Sir John said, what if Muawiyah told you to appoint Ibn Ziyad? He said, yes, then I would listen. He said, here is this letter then, that Muawiyah has already said, if this situation arises with Abu Abdullah, appoint Ibn Ziyad as the governor of Kufa. He's the only one who can handle Imam Hussein and the Shia. He says, okay, he gives the command to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, take over. He enters into Kufa with a Yemeni cloak and a black turban, and according to some accounts, a green niqab. And he is greeted at the gate entering from the direction of Najaf. Yabna Rasulullah, welcome, welcome. We are here for you. Our swords are with you. Our hearts are with you. This started to really annoy Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and he said nothing until he gets to the palace. And the governor who is being deposed, Nu'man ibn Bashir, says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we will not give this position over to you. This is what the people want. And Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad does not even pretend to be Imam Hussein. He says, enjoy the long night that you have had, for tomorrow, if you do not get out, Yazid people will drag you out. Someone recognizes the cursed voice of Ibn Ziyad and said, Wa Rabbil Kaaba, this is Ibn Ziyad. And the people disperse immediately, knowing now that this is not the blessed son of Rasulullah, Imam al-Hussein. Ibn Ziyad calls all of the people and says, anybody who is harboring these fugitives, these helpers of Abu Abdullah, if they do not come forward, they will be crucified on their doorposts. Muslim ibn Aqil immediately started to sense the tide changing. And so he starts to switch his residence. He is not going to stay with Mukhtar anymore. And Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. الثاني على حب الزهراء. Muslim ibn Aqil now moves from the house of Mukhtar to another well-known personality known as Hani ibn Urwa. Those of you who have been to Ziyarah, those of you who have been to Masjid al-Kufa, you know that Muslim ibn Aqil has a beautiful dome in Kufa. And along with him in Masjid al-Kufa are two other personalities, Mukhtar al-Thaqafi and Hani ibn Urwa. What's surprising is that in more recent years, I was just in Ziyarah a few months ago, and they pointed out the palace where Muslim ibn Aqil was executed from. And they said, look at how this building is faring. The foundations are sinking now. It is in complete ruin. As the times have gone, nobody has looked after this building. Whereas Muslim ibn Aqil has a beautiful golden dome. Metaphorically, this also teaches us a lesson, that if we stand with the right side, we will become immortalized. And if we stand with the wrong side, we also will become immortalized, but not on the rahmatullah alayhi side, more on the la'natullah alayhi side. Muslim ibn Aqil now goes to the house of Hani ibn Urwa, and the people of Ibn Ziyad start to notice that there is less and less notice of Hani in the public gatherings. So he starts to send his spies and say that the governor misses you, Ya Hani. Come and renew your allegiance to Ibn Ziyad. They start to make up excuses saying that no, Hani is sick, Hani is sick. But because his spy has infiltrated, and how did he infiltrate, brothers and sisters? All he had to do was take 30,000 dirhams from Ibn Ziyad and pretend, oh, I am a lover of Ahlul Bayt. And immediately they showed him where Muslim was. This is a mistake that those of you who sincerely want to be amongst the helpers and supporters of Imam Zaman, you need to be very careful who you allow to access the high personalities. Not even Imam, the people who are the Safir of the Imam, like Muslim. Hani come into the castle, and he is immediately told, you are a traitor to the Khalifa. He says, give over Muslim ibn Aqil. He says, even if he were under my shoe, I would not lift my foot. And Ibn Ziyad says, you made the wrong decision. He hits him with a sword and breaks his nose and takes him as a captive. Now Muslim does not even have the support of his protector, Hani ibn Urwa. He goes to the masjid of Kufa to go and lead the Maghrib Salah. Some sources say that he had 3,000 people to pray behind him. And by the end of that Jama'ah, there were only 3 people left. He now goes through those lonely streets of Kufa, the same city that his uncle Amir al-Mu'mineen not too long ago ruled. And yet now he is a stranger who is not welcomed anymore. 27 days ago, he was the most welcome celebrity in the town. And now he has been cancelled and is a pariah. One by one, as Muslim goes through these streets, one by one, each of these people leave him. And Muslim is a stranger in the city of Kufa. He goes to the house of some of the supporters who he knows can help him. And he says, can I take residence over here? And they say, yes, you can. We are your supporters. We love you. But even this woman commits a mistake which we need to learn from. She had a son by the name of Bilal who was in the employment of Bani Umayyah. She had housed Muslim ibn Aqil overnight, and she wrongfully trusted that her son would keep her secret. She made him swear by Allah that you will not reveal why I am going to our second house next door with food and with musallas and with other provisions. He swore by Allah. And then he learned the entire story that Muslim is right here and he can earn a big reward. This is one of the people, Ya Shia, that was only after the dunya and had no care about the akhirah. He turns over to Ibn Ziyad the information, and immediately Ibn Ziyad sends at morning 70 people to battle Muslim. The woman comes and tells the cousin of Imam Hussein, Muslim ibn Aqil, that you have been discovered. I'm so sorry. I did not know that my son would do this. I thought his swear, his oath meant something. But unfortunately, I have done you a disservice. Please forgive me. He says, my family has the power of intercession, and you have done enough to earn the intercession of my grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He goes to the door, but immediately is met by the 70, and he starts valiantly chopping them down one by one. Ya Muslim. He kills 41 people from the 70. Immediately, this son, Bilal, goes and writes to Ibn Ziyad and he says, you need to send reinforcements. The letter that comes back shames him and says, you need more people? What is wrong with you? Why do you need more people? He says, do you think I came to arrest a shopkeeper or some of the random uncles who sit in the masjid? You have sent me against one of the sharpest swords of Banu Hashim and Al Muhammad. 200 people are now sent, and Muslim keeps on defending and defending and defending until some of the riwayat mention that they had to dig a hole and lead Muslim to it. One of the enemies of Allah stabbed Muslim in the back, and this made him fall from some staircases into the pit, which they then covered with a boulder. When they went and hit him, they also struck him with a sword. This cut off the upper lip of Muslim, and it cut in half the lower lip. Now Muslim is bleeding, and when they took away his sword, he started crying. When they brought him in front of Ibn Ziyad, he would not say salam. They rebuked him and say salam to your commander. He said, what kind of commander is this who does not believe in the book of Allah? We, if we were given rulership, would rule by the book of Allah. He said, you are a dead man anyway, whether you greet me or not, Ibn Ziyad says. He says, do you have any final requests? He says, yes, I do. I wish I could see someone who was from my family. And then he sees the cursed face of Umar ibn Sa'ad. He says, you and I have a relationship. Please come and take my final will. He says, I have some monies that I borrowed while I was in Kufa. My armor that I'm wearing, my sword and my shield, they do not amount more than 600 dirham. Please pay it off for me. I will have no one in this city besides you to go and do this. He says, my second will is that you give me some water. He says, as for the water, you will taste the fountains of Jahannam before you ever taste water, ya Muslim. Is this how you talk to the Safir of Imam Hussein? Is this how you ask for Allah for shafa'ah, ya Umar ibn Sa'ad? By talking like this? He says, as for my third will is for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Tell him that he needs to abort this mission. Kufa has fallen. Do not come towards Kufa. Find somewhere else because the people are not with you. Ya Abu Abdullah. Umar ibn Sa'd immediately goes to Ibn Ziyad and tells him exactly what he said. Ibn Ziyad said, it's good that you betrayed Muslim because we will not honor a single one of your wills, not your debt, not your water, and definitely not Abu Abdullah. We will lure him into a trap in an open desert, and he will die a painful death that is deserving of a fasiq and a mufsid. Muslim ibn Aqil is now led to the rooftops of the palace. And he faces towards Mecca, and he says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. It's said that this was only a few hours after Imam al-Hussein had abandoned his Hajj on the day of Arafah. He was still on the outskirts of Medina, and at that point he rose up and he said, Wa alayka assalam ya Muslim. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And this teaches us, brothers and sisters, that from wherever we are, if we send a salam from our heart to Abu Abdullah, he will respond. Therefore, join me and respond and have Imam Hussein respond to your salam as well. When we say, Assalamu alayka Ya Aba Abdullah, Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad together, everybody. Wa ala ashab al-Husayn. Just two more sentences that I want to share with you, and then inshallah we will be done for tonight. At this point, Imam al-Hussein now asks, where is Hamida? Where is Hamida? Find her amongst our caravan. And Sayyidah Zainab brings Hamida. He goes and sits her down in his lap and he starts rubbing her head and caressing her head. Hamida is only 3 years old, brothers and sisters, but she is intelligent. She says, Ya Aba Abdullah, you only do this action when you see an orphan. Am I now one of the Aitam? Am I orphan? Is my father killed? Imam al-Hussein says, I am your father and my daughters are your sisters. Do not hesitate to treat me like how you treated Muslim. At this point, Hamida started to cry and say, Wa Muslima, Wa Abata. The final sentence that I'll leave you with, brothers and sisters, if your hearts can bear it, I don't know how you have the strength to keep on crying. Don't feel sad if you cannot cry any longer. This is something that only Imam Zain al-Abidin can keep doing. He can only keep on remembering Karbala and Sham and keep crying. But there's one other girl. When Imam al-Hussein came back for the second farewell on the 10th of Muharram, and he wanted to go to the battlefield, he wanted to bid his final farewell. Everyone came to bid farewell to Imam al-Hussein except for one little girl, a 6-year-old named Sukaina, and he said, Sukaina, Sukaina, where is my beloved Sukaina? Sayyidah Zainab said that she is sitting over there in the corner. She doesn't have the heart to accept that she will become a yatim within a few minutes. She doesn't know what to say to you, Ya Aba Abdullah. Please go towards her so that she does not regret these final moments. Sukaina, Sukaina, please don't cry. Please, Father, why can't I go on this journey with you? The journey I am about to go on is very hard, and you have your own path to serve Rasulullah when you get older. Sukaina says, Ya Bata, I have only one request. A month ago, I saw Hamida sitting in your lap being caressed like an orphan. I know what my fate is in a few minutes, Ya Aba Abdullah. Please caress me the same way. I know I will be an orphan, but I want your hand to fall over my head. One last time before you go towards these enemies. Imam Hussein sits her on his lap and he allows her this final meeting. This is the final time, brothers and sisters, that she will see her father in this world. And after this, she will have to see him on his head on a spike. And then in the process of his yada, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. Raise your hands, brothers and sisters. With these tears, you can forgive so many sins. You can ask for so many hajat. Do not underestimate the power of these tears. And recite with me the blessed ayah 5 times, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء together أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء louder everyone أما يجيب لشفاء المرضى أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. For the hastening of the reappearance of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, a 5th one. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. Oh Allah, we ask you by your holy virtuous names, باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأكرم, 10 times all together. Oh Ya Allah, يا الله 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 يا الله. اللهم نقسم بمسلم بن عقيل ألا ما يجعل في شيعة أبا عبد الله ومن ذريتنا إلى يوم الدين من خدمته المخلصين يا الله. اللهم بحق فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها اكشف عنا سوء يا الله. اغفر ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والجالسين والحاضرات وفي الخصوص على العلماء والشهداء نقرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.